Okay, I'm going to introduce the panel now. So if you guys would come out, that would be great. It's time for our panel discussion. And as you went through the various educational and workshop sessions, we heard a number of questions and issues that you shared with the group. And we also would like to hear some ideas that you have and really have another opportunity to ask this panel. And also think about some ideas you can implement when you get back. That was one of the themes I heard Penny Bonda talking about earlier today. You know, what can you implement when you get back to your office? So take a minute, hand out those scrap paper cards, and or fill in those scrap paper cards and hand them in, and we'll get our panel going. To my right, I have Nikki Bai. Nikki has been teaching a class over in the university on life cycle assessment and helped us with our Think Chair. Sam Post, who was doing a class on sustainability, LEED, and he also did a design workshop this afternoon. Stuart Hart, who was talking about strategy, and Stephen Skurlos. And they're here, and they're ready to take your questions. So does anybody have a question right away? Where's Doug Evers when I need him? Where's Chris Dallenbachus when I need him?
No questions?
Okay, guys, I'm going to ask you guys to kick it off. What are some things that you learned? What are some things that you took away as a result of this conference? Nikki?
Absolutely. The idea that when people talk and work together and just think in life cycles, that ideas pop up, and I had a task for my groups to come up with improvement potentials on some products that they could choose, and it was really amazing to see what ideas they come up with, first analyzing a little bit and then finding out in about half an hour. So all this optimization in lifecycle aspects of products is really something where you can instantaneously find some improvement potentials. That was great to see in my groups. So amazing.
Stuart, what were some of your takeaways from your group?
Well, I think it once again confirmed my my instinct and experience that having a lot of people around from the design community, design background, and to some degree kind of the people with technical capabilities, but especially the design piece of it, I think, is really important. And the level of creative thinking and asking questions from different angles than would ordinarily occur if you just had more of a straight business group that was really something. So it was. I really got a lot out of the 3 concurrent sessions because of the quality of the questioning and the discussion. So that for me was a really important takeaway.
So Stephen, what was the most controversial thing you heard today or yesterday?
To a large extent, I had the sense that we were of one mind. There was a lot of sort of technical controversy, if you will. Is biodiesel as good as people think it is? What about this hydrogen infrastructure? So at that level, there were controversies. But in terms of the direction that we need to go in terms of a sustainability vision, I wouldn't say the things that really matter. There was much controversy.
Sam, how about your workshop this afternoon? People looked pretty engaged in that.
I wish I could have attended.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was really a lot of fun. A lot of the people in the workshop were novices, but the quality of the output was great. They got a chance to see how the creative process works in putting together a sustainable building, and we got some great stuff. I even learned some new stuff from that. It's just a great free flow of an exchange of information.
So, Nikki, what did you learn while you were here? I mean, did you learn something new?
Yeah, we're going to put a living wall in our next project.
You are?
Sure. That was a technology I hadn't been exposed to before, so one of our participants brought it up, and I'm very interested in finding out more about it.
That's cool. Nikki?
And what I learned from the workshops or from the whole conference? Alan, as rather conference or workshops, because they're 2 different things. On the workshops, absolutely this that I actually should cut down in the basics I have in my slides and leaving people more to working together, because once again this group work turned out to be a real interesting thing, and I hope there are some people here who attended my workshops and have the same impression. And concerning the whole meeting, what I take home from that is actually a very positive impression of real, honest environmental concern among American people. Because coming from Europe and having this perspective always from Europe and having the background of the more restrictive environmental laws and more active maybe environmental work, societies, whatever, I'm really pleased to see so much enthusiasm here and interest for this environmental and sustainable issue. So that's definitely a positive thing I take home from this here.
Great.
Great.
Okay, I have some questions. So Stuart, this one's for you, I think. Think about 1 year from now when Green by Design 3 takes place. What do you predict will be the biggest difference from what we were thinking today?
That's an excellent question. And I don't know, but 12 months isn't that far away. I mean, there would be a prediction and then there would be a hope. You know, and I guess I would have to say if there was a hope, I don't know if it's a prediction. I hope it's a prediction. I would have to say that many more of us would be thinking and working in the upper parts of the model that I talked about yesterday. Again, not because I think the lower parts around making improvements to current products and processes aren't important, but simply because I think from the standpoint of the world and from the standpoint of where the real opportunities are, we need to be more focused on the innovation agenda and on figuring out how we bring the rest of the world into this game.
Okay, cool. This is for the panel, so you guys can fight over this one. Are there equal opportunities for biological and technical cycles, or does one have more promise for future sustainability than the other?
It's difficult to generalize, right? In the context of a single product, you might be able to answer that question. Again, we have to ask what the goal is. Is the goal to create cycles, or is the goal of a sustainable future really one where, you know, we're making better products, we're increasing standard of living, and at the same time reducing environmental impact? Cycles have a large part of that. But they're frankly not always the answer, right? At least when we look in the short term and medium term, given the available technological options and design solutions that we have. So, you know, like all these questions, I think to a large extent it depends.
So, Nikki, do you agree with that?
I do agree with the aspect that you cannot generalize. I would say that technical cycles, at least, are something that we have lots of today,
yes,
and that this is definitely going to continue, and that biological cycles are something that always have been there, but should be increased. So maybe a move from the more technical cycles today to more biological cycles in the near future. But we are definitely not getting rid of the technical part ever. So, but a move in the direction of the more biological ones.
Okay, so Sam, where do you think the most work is yet to be done when aiming for sustainability? Is it political, is it social or educational or economic?
Educational right now. I think we have the tools to make the case for the economic side of it, which is in all of our dealings with all of our clients, that's the factor that they key in on first. If there's a social benefit for it, or if that's part of their agenda, that's a great bonus. And certainly everything that, at least that we're dealing with in the built environment, has a strong focus on the environmental benefit. So I think right now the economic is probably the strongest of the three.
Stuart, did you have any thoughts after hearing Bobby Kennedy today? And would you answer differently?
Say that again?
Yeah, where is the most work yet to be done when aiming for sustainability? Is it political, social, or educational, or economic?
I would have to agree that the educational agenda probably is still the key one, because there's a level of awareness raising and kind of probing and understanding that's required before you can really think creatively about the opportunity in the space. But I think following shortly behind that is the economic agenda, that we've got to be able to convert a deeper understanding of what the real challenges are into actionable, economically supportable strategies moving forward. And so I would fold the social and the environmental agendas into the educational process. That's part of the educational process, is learning how to envision all of those simultaneously.
Can I follow up? I'd like to follow up, if I could, on that, just to take a different view from the standpoint of the education that I see. I have a question about how we set our priorities. Right? Sustainability means different things to different people, as we've heard. And in my view, the view of government is that of setting priorities. It's the only unified voice of society that's legitimate. And if we're going to set goals, then education, economics, we can try to build arguments, but in what direction? I think we need to move in the same direction. And my hope, based on the morning session, is that the confidence in the current environmental protection strategy we have in this administration is being a little bit shaken, along in other areas too, as you read in the news. And I hope in 12 months that maybe the tide will have shifted and we're at the bottom point now, but we'll see.
Yeah, I would hope that that's true, but again, I'm not holding out much hope. One of the paradoxical things, in my view at least, about what Robert Kennedy is saying, is that on the one hand, government is, I think he made a very clear articulation of how much a part of the problem it is today. But then at the same time, the prescription is for the government, to play the key role in moving us, forward. To some extent, there's kind of a disconnect there, and I think it's what you're saying, that we're hoping against hope that there will be rapid and sudden change of course. I'm just not sure that that's going to happen.
Okay, this one's a jump ball. Everyone here is going to leave inspired, motivated, and optimistic. It seems, however, that the bad news always comes faster than the good. Give us 3 things to watch for continued optimism.
I'll feel
Everybody's
that.
nodding and no one's taking the ball.
I'll feel that. When LEED really became a market presence in 2000, 2001, the first year there were maybe 100 people that got their accreditation. In the second year there were 400. A month ago there were 20,000 people that had been accredited. The attendance at the U.S. Green Building Council has gone from, I think the first one had about 1,000, the second one was 3,000. 6,000 in Pittsburgh, 8,000 this year. The momentum and the change in the face of tradition in the building industry is moving very, very rapidly. The one part that is really most exciting to me is the demand side economics. We're creating a vacuum in a need for new products to be developed, and that is really exciting from my viewpoint.
I'd like to give 3 if I could. Just to follow up, Prius versus Hummer. Prius seems to be winning. Okay, a little bit there. Renewable energy and biofuel, much more discussion about that. Seems to be increasing rapidly. And at least from my lens at the university, student interest in bringing environmental science, technical solutions and business solutions together, the interest in bringing the 3 together and really forming lives around the pursuit of that, it seems to be growing very rapidly.
Well, of course, my points would be definitely that tools and methods for both analysis and synthesis of better ideas and products are in place. So that's something I think many of you learned today and yesterday, that we have enough tools, we have enough databases, we have enough methods to use. So this part is done. Although we are in the lower part of your matrix, it's still there. The tools are in place. Second thing is that people are interested, and companies like Steelcase are really showing that it's not just some scientific thing that is we could use it. There are people who are interested in that and working with these tools and methods that we have. And the third thing is where I see a potential development is something called product service systems, an idea which is working on the basic principle that products and services are combined, that you somehow move over from only a product-based society to a more service-based society, and thus using less energy, less chemicals, and so forth for these services. So I definitely see a high potential there, and it's great to see. Again, just want to stress that companies like Steelcase are setting something up like this and really showing interest in that.
One response?
Yeah.
I'm by nature optimistic, and I think just the whole way of thinking about this as a business opportunity is based on optimism, and on the upside potential. But one other indicator in my mind has to do with, at least from my own personal experience, what type of people am I working with in companies over time, and how is that changing? And so if I think back, like 10 years ago, to the extent that I was working a lot in companies, and I was, but it tended to be with people in environment, health, and safety, almost exclusively. Not that that's a bad thing, guys, because it's not, but it tended to be almost exclusively that. Or it tended to be people, certainly younger people coming out of business school that had the fire in their belly. Yeah, I mean, they were into it, and there were a few enlightened senior managers. But increasingly, as time goes on, the work that I do increasingly in companies is with people who are at the point in their career where they can really make something happen. They're in emerging markets, they're in new business development, they're in new market development. I view that as a very optimistic development.
Okay, good. So I have one immediate question that I need to address. This is, where is the female representative on the panel? Where's Penny? Where's Rochelle? So I would invite both of those people to come up. Penny, are you here? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll fix that. They didn't RSVP for the panel, I've just found out, so that's why they're not up here. We did ask them just to get credit for that. Okay, Stuart, in the meantime, if there's an abundance of people and a scarcity of resources, why do we continue to automate work?
That's a great question, and I think that's one of the reasons why focusing on the base of the pyramid is so important. That by focusing on the base of the pyramid, you're almost forced into thinking about a different way of doing it. That by definition, you're not going to be able to engage in a capital-intensive automation-based strategy. It'll be much more efficient from an investment point of view, and it'll be geared much more around creating jobs and livelihoods by definition. So for me, that's one of the reasons why I think base of the pyramid is so important.
So the second follow-up on that was, does craft production play a role in providing meaningful work going forward?
Craft production. Sure it does. No question. And in fact, I think there are entire industries that can be derived from that. They already are. Right? I think we're in the early stages of seeing how that might play out over time.
Okay, Penny, in your work, do you find that work and sustainability by corporations is driven by a market need and Me Too thinking, or is it a core corporate value?
It depends what corporation you're talking about. I think that, there's Interface, where that was driven by a core value of Ray Anderson. There's Kaiser Permanente, that is, you know, the largest healthcare provider in the country, and their really wonderful environmental programs began with the sort of middle management employees who said, we want to do this. We want to implement environmental initiatives in all areas of our business, you know, not only the providing of health care, but in their facilities and in the operations of their organization. And so they began the initiatives with their core values, and then they went to their upper management and they said, we want to do this. And to their credit, their upper management said, okay. On the other hand, there are a lot of companies that begin to do this because they are operating a little bit out of fear that if they don't, they're going to lose their customers, they're going to lose some of their PR advantages that they have. And I'm not going to name any names, but I think that the ones that do it from their heart, and I do think Steelcase is one of those, because I've known you guys for a long time. I think I've known Dave for my whole life. I think that Steelcase is one of those where they do it from their heart, and it shows. And the difference is between the two really, I think, becomes very apparent to anybody that listens to the pitch.
Great, thanks. Rochelle, how do we accelerate the adoption of sustainable practices in the business world versus the battle with quarterly results?
I think that it comes down to understanding how to talk to the clients and using the right terminology and understanding who the person is that you're talking to. That has been the most successful for us. To understand if I'm talking to the CFO, then I need to really be talking about what the rate of return is on the investment that they're making. We've made some progress in being able to talk about workplace productivity and the savings that a company can see on those fronts by being more sustainable in the choices that they're making in their projects, and I think that there's a lot more research and work to be done in that area. But it really comes down to how you approach it. An example is that in Minnesota we have the paper mills, and when we first started, it was one of our major clients, and I wanted to go in and talk to them about daylighting the factories and trying to improve productivity in the factories by bringing daylight to them, reducing their energy costs. That's how I was trying to talk about it. But my own partners within my firm couldn't even hear what I was saying because they viewed me as a tree hugger, and that if I went into the paper mill and started talking to their client, because it wasn't my client, it was my partner's client, that the paper mill would be turned off by the fact that I'm going to come in and tell them to stop cutting down trees. And I said, I have no intentions of telling them that they can't cut down trees. I just want to help them understand how to improve productivity and reduce energy. So there's a lot of just, I think, rethinking how we communicate with each other and who the person is that you're talking to.
Can I respond also?
Absolutely.
Because I think there is a tendency to think about those two things as though they're a trade-off. You know, that it's either short-term earnings or it's longer-term, growth potential. Like that could be part of the problem. That from the company side, we need to figure out how to speak with a more unified voice. That there's a tendency to have different messages for different constituencies. That the CFO says one thing, to the financial community, and because the company thinks that the financial community wants to hear about short-term earnings, the message might be different to the environmental community. There'd be yet a third message to another. I think it's time to speak with one voice, to have the same message to everyone. And I actually think there's some truth to the idea that if in fact you lay it out, to the financial community is as interested in what your growth prospect is out there 5 years as they are the short-term earnings. And if you can put the whole thing in perspective, that might turn out to be the more persuasive message, rather than just pandering to the belief that it's about short-termism.
Okay, good. The card says briefly, this isn't my editorial comment, briefly, what do each of you do personally at home to continue your environmental efforts? Maybe we can take some ideas to home as well as business. Nikki?
Oh, that's an easy one, but also special. Actually, I don't have a car. It's that's
Pretty good.
But I cycle to work and take public transportation, but that's something we have in Copenhagen in place, and which is where there are many people doing that. Another reason is that cars are extremely expensive, so the average Dane is not having a car because they are environmentally friendly, but because they are so expensive. So, but my decision was to not driving a car to work every morning. Well, but again, I had a talk to some of you, actually, to Rochelle and Stephen also on this. America is different from Europe in terms of space and distances, and that's why cars are necessary. So it's I can't say, please do something and drop your car. It's impossible. And infrastructure has to be in place, which is the case in Europe, whatever. But well, that's an easy one for me. So I don't have a car.
Sam, do you turn off the water while you brush your teeth?
I do, and while I shave. Well, something that, that's very obvious, and I would hope that most of you have done this already, that you can take home with you tonight is just change your light bulbs to compact fluorescent bulbs. It's a very easy one. I'm very excited about the potential, probably in the next 5 to 10 years, of all the new technologies that are out there. The LED lighting that's coming to market now is going to use a fraction of the power of even fluorescent lights. Very cool stuff coming on. Lowering demand in your household will reduce the pressure on the utilities. It adds capacity to the existing utilities that are out there now, and it may get us awful close to being able to supplement or to provide all our own power at our own house with photovoltaics or wind or any of the other new emerging green power technologies.
Stuart, I know you don't eat Chilean sea bass, but what beyond that?
Well, I think just in my own personal, just thinking about my own situation, that probably the biggest change for me has been just in the last 2 or 3 years to move to a place where I can live really close to where I work, which I'm now able to do. And so we were able to shed a car, which is actually I think that's a major step forward, right? Not just a small car, but get rid of one altogether, right? So that to me, that ought to be our aim in terms of creating sustainable communities. We ought to be able to live either where we work or really close to it.
Stephen?
Well, I drive a small car when necessary. Actually, I put an office at home, and I made a little rule with myself when I'm working at home, and I try to work home as often as I can. It's great to be out of the office. You can be more productive. But I don't make any thermostat adjustments. I just deal with the climate in my little office, and I hope that does a little bit anyway.
Penny, I know you only put 2,000 miles a year on your car, but beyond that?
Beyond that, when I go to the grocery store, I take cloth bags with me, and I ask them to fill them up, and then I bring them home. I also have changed most of my light bulbs to compact fluorescents, although I have to admit that in the bathroom, I still want to look the best I can when I put my makeup on. So, I have a little 60 watt in there. It's not going to hurt too much.
Okay. Rochelle?
I've really tried to put a lot more attention onto the choices of things that I buy, from like Tom's of Maine toothpaste. I've been using that for a long time. Looking at the packaging, as I'm looking at products that are on the shelf and what I need, is it natural? Is it organic? What kind of packaging are they using? Can I pick something that has reduced packaging? And I'm also really starting to concentrate a lot on the food that I eat, which I haven't spent a lot of time on, and it's quite an endeavor to get into understanding where the food actually comes from. So I'm trying to buy things, that have been grown locally, and trying to track that down, and just kind of trying to understand that a little bit better.
We in one of the sessions they talked about, with every half gallon of Horizon milk, you get about a half gallon of diesel fuel with that milk. So this idea of local is really an interesting one. Nikki, we're going to move on to another section. What can we do to promote life cycle thinking in the marketplace and move away from single attribute marketing, like just toxicity or something like that?
I'm afraid I don't understand the question, because single attribute marketing would be we don't have toxic aspects in our products.
Versus how I'm reading the question, unless the author wants to stand up, versus one attribute marketing, just focusing on one aspect of the product. Now, this person's saying, how do we focus on whole life cycle thinking?
Well, the idea is basically to get over to the ones marketing their products that the holistic aspect is the one which has to be improved, and not just single aspects. So a product which doesn't have toxic ingredients might be extremely bad in the energy dimension, and or maybe based on materials that are not recyclable or whatever. So that's something that people have to understand, that the total picture is what counts, and not just single aspects of the picture. And what I'm doing is, of course, when I work with companies or institutions, it's of course having the discussion and getting this thinking into the heads of the people, which, as the conference shows and the workshop showed, it's actually possible. It's just something that you have to do. Start the discussion and get people thinking in a broader perspective than just one in single streams.
Great. Okay, Steve, this is for you. Does a sustainable product perform as well as an unsustainable product? And then Penny, I'd like for you to follow up.
Well, which product are we talking about? It's hard to answer. Does a sustainable product perform as well as an unsustainable product? Absolutely. There's nothing in and of sustainability that affects performance. It doesn't have to be this way. If you lock yourself into a technological solution, like the internal combustion engine running on gasoline, you may have trade-offs, and that's real. But there is a world of solutions, so it only depends on how narrow you're being. We have no reason to be locked into the IC gasoline engine. We have biodiesel right now. We can be doing this. We have hybrid electric vehicles. We will have plug-in hybrids very soon. So, I don't see this as being one or the other. It has to be both, and it will be both.
I think this is my intuitive response. I think that when companies design products that are very sustainable, like the Think chair that we're looking at down there, I think more thinking, that was a pun. I think that more thinking goes into the design of the product, in not just its environmental attributes, but throughout. It's in everything about it. It's aesthetic, its performance, its composition, its manufacturing, its disposal. So intuitively, I have to believe that would make it perform better.
Okay.
One quick comment.
Yeah.
A sustainable product that doesn't perform well is unsustainable.
That's true. Has to look, feel, act, and be priced normal, right?
Yeah.
Stuart, this one's for you. This conference hasn't discussed curbside consumer waste. I'm concerned with turning the third world into our consumer waste landfill just to be sustainable. Can you just comment on that?
Yeah, indeed. I am too. Right, so the whole discussion about base of the pyramid, for example, which I'm assuming is prompting the question, it can't be about replicating the consumerist model that we've developed here. It can't possibly work. Right? So, and we talked about this a little bit in our breakout sessions, that sachet packaging, to get products into smaller, more affordable packages might be an interesting short-term way in. But over the longer run, it's probably not a sustainable approach. I mean, you now create a whole new set of problems with mountains of solid waste as a result of that. So I think that this is where the idea of disruptive thinking comes in, that unless we can break free from the way that we've gone about solving problems at the top of the pyramid and use the base of the pyramid as a vehicle for truly driving innovation, then it's difficult to see how it moves us toward a more sustainable world. That it must be the incubator for a more sustainable way of living, and can be.
Okay.
May I follow up on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Problem is, and question is, how do we make China not just copying us? I mean, we had the discussion yesterday somehow, because there are people who want to have the standard of living that we have somehow today. How do we make them? How do we make them do this disruptive leaps over to some other? That's a real thing we have to find out about.
We can't make anyone do any, it's not a question of making anyone do anything. I think it's a matter of creating options that are more attractive, that are a better fit to the conditions that people live in, that solve problems more effectively. And in the long run, we may be able to learn from them, and we may discover that that's a more appealing way to live ourselves. We at the top of the pyramid.
Anybody else want to add anything? Good. Okay, so the next two questions really deal with energy, and is replacing fossil fuel burning power plants with nuclear the answer to growth? Because there's no CO2. Anyone want to take that one?
I'll take it.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that ultimately where we're headed is toward a distributed energy future. And I know that there are small nukes in the offing, but I haven't seen a household scale nuke yet, and I'm not sure that's a viable model. I think that we're headed down the track toward distributed generation, toward a distributed energy infrastructure. That seems clear in my mind that that's where we're going, and I just don't see where nuclear fits into that picture. Precisely because of the end waste cycle issue. I don't see a solution to that.
So Yucca Mountain isn't it, I guess?
Not in my view. I have a hard time viewing that as a cycle.
The only thing I can say about that is that I read a lot about the emerging technologies that are coming out in the energy industries. And there are so many exciting ideas out there that are being developed. They're mind-blowing. Here's one. Tires have to go around to work. And when they hit the pavement, they get flat. Very quickly, you don't realize it, but they do. And then when they start to turn some more and they leave the pavement, they get round again. Well, in that movement, energy can be created. Energy is created. Why not harness the energy from the tires to power the automobile? That is a great idea that we would not need any other fuel than what is created by the movement of the object. And I think that's the kind of direction that we're going to see innovation take us. And we're not going to need fossil fuels, and we're not going to need nuclear energy and waste.
Hey, Sam, is fuel cell a real promising technology that can be implemented in the U.S., and if so, when? And can you give some examples?
From what I've read, I doubt we'll really see anything available for use for a decade. We're a long way out on that, just supplying the raw material and then having the technology price come down so that it's available on a broad scale. I don't see that happening for quite a while.
At least in the U.S.
Probably.
Where do you see it happening?
Oh, I see it happening in the developing world. It already is happening in the developing world, right? And most of the early uses are very small-scale applications. Really small-scale power generating applications. Or if it's mobility, which was, been the place where we've tried to kind of force it into the top of the pyramid, which probably is at least a decade off, right, for a whole range of reasons. Then the mobility applications in places like China and India are, scooters, a lot of other very small-scale applications where you could actually downsize the thing to the point where it might be potentially affordable and solve a lot of the technical problems of fuel storage that makes it a potentially affordable application as well. I think that, like, that's where we're going to see it happen. Again, it follows the disruptive innovation logic, you know, not the kind of force it into the top of the pyramid and expect it to trickle down.
Okay. Rochelle, this says, also I see the possibility, it's a follow-up to the first question, also I see the possibility of combining structure and building, heating, cooling, and energy systems so that they're not separate elements, but one energy framework. Can you talk about that?
I don't have any specific examples, but I think that that is a good possibility. So I think that there are more examples probably in Europe actually of exterior skins that have been developed and used that we haven't necessarily tried out here, that we need to be thinking about. The other thing about it, though, is as we look at office buildings and things like that, and we're looking at the structural and mechanical systems and how they can be coordinated together, is to also reconsider what reasonable temperatures are in the indoor space. And to, you know, I recently moved out of a building where when it was 20 below outside, it was cold in the office, and when it was really hot outside, it was really warm in the office. So I actually wore heavy wool sweaters and I wore sundresses. And I moved into an office space where I'll probably be wearing a wool sweater all the time. And we need to rethink if that's okay. And then once we get past that point, I think then we can start looking at alternative ways to design our building systems so that they can be more energy efficient and more integrated in the way that they were designed to begin with.
I'd like to follow up on this European vision. That's right. There's something called zero energy houses, both in Denmark and Germany somewhere, basically living on solar power and keeping both heat and light within the house and some energy saving mechanisms so that, well, it's not really zero energy input into such a house, but it's really working around. And a brilliant example of this type of building is actually the Reichstag in Berlin, German Reichstag, which Sir Norman Foster designed with this big dome on top, and where sunlight is actually let down into the Parliament room, and for instance, during hot periods, day periods, temperature is collected and saved down and somewhere below the surface in order to give up this energy in cooler periods. So there are things to do, or which are in place, technologies and examples for that which are brilliant. And a nice side effect is that climate in such houses is usually better than in climatized. So funny enough, so there are examples for that. It's a good thing.
Okay, we just have a couple more questions. Nikki, the science of green design has outpaced green communications. What tools are in place to communicate to the stakeholders the benefits of green design? And anybody on the panel can follow up too.
One tool to communicate environmental benefits is definitely also something that you are doing, and Steelgas in Europe is doing a lot, called environmental product declarations, which is simply a transparent and standardized way of documenting environmental performance. There's a coming standard 14025, which is actually doing exactly that, documenting environmental performance with life cycle data for the business-to-business communication. And there are other labels which are communicative to the customer, for instance, end customer of a product. There are tools in place, and once again, I can just say that you, both in France and here, with these EPDs, you are way ahead of many other companies doing that. Stephen has one example from Sweden on Electrolux, and the same idea with EPDs. That's one tool to use to communicate, to say, we have this performance, and judge us based on that, which is in place.
Yeah, the question I'm not sure is so much about the communications tools being available, but the will to collect the information and the will to educate consumers as to what that information means. And, as we have hopefully a swelling of interest in this area, then going back to the question about what we learned during this session, what I learned during the last 2 days is not only that designers can comprehend the EPD, multi-dimensional environmental scoring, this idea of a nutrition label for your product, but that designers are hungry for it. And they want to know, and it's part of diving into that contextual experience of the product. The environment is another aspect.
One of the communication tools that I know that you can take home with you today, it's Hanover Principle number 9, which is, now that you've all been here for 2 days and been educated on new sustainable ideas, it is now your responsibility to go back and teach others everything that you learned at this conference. And so, through the power of 10, going out and communicating everything that we've learned here to the people that you know is going to be quite important.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, right.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you. That's a wrap. All right, so we're coming to a close now. And as Green by Design comes to a close, I would like, and Dave, on behalf of Dave as well, to extend our thanks to our sponsors, our planning team, and especially to you, our guests. We really hope that you found this a positive experience. We had a great time putting it together, and our plans for the next one are in the works. So
we are working on it. Just as a reminder, as we bring it to a close, watch for the email survey that will be coming, and please take a few minutes of your time and send it back to us. It's how we critique our performance in terms of how well we met your objectives. We do a report card for Mr. Wegge in terms of how responsibly we used his money, and also how responsibly we used the money that you all paid to come here. So it really does mean a lot to us in grading ourselves to make sure that we delivered to you something valuable. With that, very quickly wrapping up, a couple of things that I guess I would take away as an observation from the conference myself is that there are many, many big things that we can do as businesses. There are many, many small things that we can do as individuals. And I think sometimes we forget that each and every one of us has to serve as an individual. And as you were pointing out, and I think it almost could have been the close for me, and I could have stopped right there, that we forget the power of one. We forget how to engage the individuals. And just to tell you a very quick story, we did a few years ago a survey of our employees to try to gauge their level of awareness and commitment to environmental issues. And as we walked through our buildings, and it wasn't really all that scientific, we walked through the buildings with 3 questions, and we asked people randomly, do you care about the environment, why do you care, and how do you demonstrate that you care? And when we asked people if they cared, overwhelmingly you get a yes. It's a mom and apple pie, why would you not? When you ask them why they care, 2 categories of responses. I'm worried about my children and grandchildren, or I love the outdoors, I hunt, fish, and camp. And when you ask people how they demonstrated they cared, the overwhelming response was, I recycle. So here we are trying to talk to people whose frame of reference is, I recycle, about sustainability, about things like this. We're leaving them out. We have to figure out how to frame, we have to be, in terms of a call to action, let's connect with the individuals. And if they are about recycling, let's start there, let's build on it, and let's grow so that we can take this message out, so that we have an army rather than a few of us as small voices. We created a program, we call it Small Green Steps, to try to connect to the individuals in our company so that they can connect to our strategy. Let's all take a small green step. Thank you.
We'll let you go now, but I was asked to remind you, if some of the presentations were videotaped today, and as you want to take this message back to your colleagues in your office or students or people you work with, many of those sessions will be available for download on steelcase.com. It's going to be about 2 weeks from today. So go back to the website and you can download certainly Bobby Kennedy's speech as well as several other sessions that were also taped. So thank you very much for coming.